Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring you today's most pressing issues from across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. So it's been a week since President Yoon Suk Yeol was indicted under detention on charges of being the mastermind behind a December 3rd martial law imposition, which has plunged the country into a political crisis. The indictment, announced Sunday, makes Yoon the first sitting president in the country's history to face such charges while in office. Now, this comes as Yoon also faces an impeachment trial, with the Constitutional Court set to decide on his fate within 180 days. The Seoul Central District Court has scheduled the first preparatory hearing for Yoon for February 20th. Now, meanwhile, the Constitutional Court has postponed its ruling on the constitutionality of acting President Choi Sang-mok's decision to withhold the appointment of a ninth justice, which could sway the outcome of Yoon's impeachment, as 6 justices' consent is required to uphold his impeachment. Now, for a deeper analysis of this currently developing situation, we invite attorney Kim Ji-soo here into the studio. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And also joining us online is Song Se-ryun, a professor of law at Kyunghee University. Great to have you again, Professor.
Happy to join you.
So, Professor, let's start with the criminal trial of President Yoon Suk Yeol, who has been indicted and detained. Could you explain for us the background behind the prosecution's decision to indict President Yoon, making him the first sitting president in South Korean history to do so?
Well, as you know, CIO, Corruption Investigation Office, has been investigating the president, and they transferred the file to the prosecutor's office because under the separation of investigation and indictment scheme in Korea, CIO does not have the power to indict the president. They only have the authority to investigate it. The prosecutor's office, on the other hand, has the power to indict, but not to investigate. But normally, they were allowed to have the complementary or the supplementary investigation once they get the file. But the court, in what I think is an unusual move, denied that motion. So the prosecutor's office had a very short time to decide whether to indict the president. I think they indicted the president under several reasons. One is they think that they have sufficient evidence. They could not investigate the president themselves, but CIO got the files from the police and the military police as well. And they've been investigating many other witnesses other than the president. So while during the 36 days or so that the CIO had the time to investigate, I think they interviewed and investigated military and police officials up to 10 under 100 people. And the police had an investigation that transferred to CIO, which included the physical evidence that showed the troop movement, which is a crucial element. And the prosecutor's office also had indicted Kim Mok-yeon, who is former defense minister, who is a very key witness. So I think they think that they are pretty full on the investigation or the evidences. And the other consideration is that they would claim that the president can destroy evidences, if not the flight risk. So the detention or the indictment is warranted. And they had to decide whether to indict him or not anyways. So if they delay it, they're in the same situation because they cannot investigate. So they did it right away.
Mm-hmm. Now let's bring in Ms. Kim to the conversation. So President Yoon's insurrection case has been formally assigned to the 25th Criminal Division. But as we know, former Defense Minister Kim Mok-yeon and others related to that incident are also assigned to the same division. And there are concerns that whether a single division would be able to properly handle all of these cases. What's your opinion on this?
Well, first of all, we need to understand how cases are assigned in our current judiciary system. So basically, there is a Supreme Court rules to state that related cases can be assigned to the same division in order to streamline the process. So the thought process here is very simple. Related cases are typically have relatable issues and relatable evidence, so that dividing that to a single division can handle the cases into a much more efficient way. And by then, the court can maintain consistency, and also we can ensure that similar standards can be applied to broader across the boards. And there's always but here, when you get multiple defendants, like in this case, each person might have a different story and a different defense strategy. So these kind of things can definitely drag things out. So, however, I believe that 25th Criminal Division is suited to be a prime position since it already has a solid grasp of the issue and also the context surrounding President Yoon cases.
So it's better to, have all of these ideas and all of these people in one division. With this, then President Yoon is set to undergo his first trial under custody for up to 6 months, like we've said, 180 days. And his criminal trial is set to begin with a hearing on the 20th. Could you tell us about the key issues of the criminal trial?
Okay, so in terms of the criminal trial only, the key legal issues here are mainly focused on the allegations of insurrection. So before we delve into the deeper part, we need to know what insurrection charges are consisted of. So there are main two legal thresholds here. First, the intention to overturn the nation itself, and second, the manifestation of the riot itself. So as for the intention, the key issue here is whether the actions to deploy armies in the National Assembly were to aim to undermine the constitutional governance. Now, regarding the evidence, a lot of things revolves around the encrypted phones that the president used with the army. And the question here is, what were these phones used for? The prosecution must prove that the use of the phone was coordinated actions that directly contributes to the alleged cases of insurrections. And as for rioting, this does not mean just a group of getting unruly. It extends to an action that significantly disturbs a public peace. So for instance, there was a case of former President Chun Doo-hwan's declaring martial law to nationwide has been seen as a riot. It disturbs national stability. So for President Yoon, a crucial question here is that whether his actions were just a mere of so whether his actions were just extreme measures or if they cross the line and can be seen as riot itself.
Now, we know that today, President Yoon's visitation rights at the Seoul Detention Center have been already restored, and he met with members of the ruling People Power Party, and he told them he called for them to unite together to bring hope for the youth and the people as well. Professor Song, so these types of messages coming out from Yoon, do you think they could influence public opinion or even the judgment from the court?
Well, it'll definitely influence the public opinions, but it shouldn't influence the judges. But the answer might not be that clear. Politicians live off the public opinions or perception of it, but the justices should stick to the adherence of the legal principles. But, interestingly, presidential approval rating is very high. Ironically, now that his presidential power is suspended, I think he's trying to use this public opinions to maybe influence the justices. I mean, there are defense teams' tactics to the urge for the recusal of the justices and questioning whether their legitimacy of their appointments and whatnot. So these agitation tactics, well, plausible arguments from the defense team, Maybe one of the things that one of the kind of atmosphere they are trying to create so that the judgment might be delayed or have some confusions that would benefit the president's defense. So I think the answer is that it should not influence the justices, but law ultimately is in the context of society, and we cannot really escape from the fact that the law and the policies and politics in the hands of the voters. So I think it'll seep into the decisions. We'll see how much influence it has.
Right. We'll see how it will change the minds of the public, those messages. Now, Yoon's impeachment trial, which was kind of paused during the Lunar New Year holiday, will resume. And in the fifth hearing scheduled for Tuesday this week, witnesses with conflicting testimonies from President Yoon's side, like former Counterintelligence Command Chief Yeo In-hyung, are expected to appear. Professor Song, what kind of points do you think the Constitutional Court will focus on?
Well, it's going to be a legal drama, I think. That, as I mentioned, the defense tactic seems to be that the former defense minister Kim Mok-yeon now is saying that it's all him. He did that. He ordered. He issued those instructions to other people. So he is either a bad guy or somebody who misunderstood the president's intentions. But of course, there are other testimonies from the generals and other civil servants who say otherwise. So the court proceeding going forward will focus on the who did what, but more importantly, who may be lying. I think that the testimonies will be closely watched, and this legal drama of who said what or who's telling the truth will be a key point to watch for in coming days.
Right, so we'll have to stick our eyes on that. Now, ahead of this fifth hearing, President Yoon's legal team has submitted a motion to the Constitutional Court requesting the recusal of 3 justices on the grounds of political bias. Under what kind of circumstances do these justices recuse themselves, and what kind of decision do you think the Constitutional Court would make on this?
A justice is required to recuse themselves only under specific circumstances that are outlined in the Constitutional Court Act, Article 24. So the provision includes contents such as having a direct personal interest in the outcome of the case, or having a previous involvement in another capacity, or has or have been maintaining a familial ties with the party involved in. However, the allegation raised by the President Yoon's legal team is that there are some potential biases in several justices here, such as their kin or their spouses are being involved in a political bias group, such as Minbyun, or their colleagues are currently representing the other side of the party, such as National Assembly, and they're worried that the personal and these professional connections might have an impact on the trial itself. However, the likelihood of these justices to be stepping aside seems very low. Previously, the Constitutional Court has already rejected the similar case of recusal of Justice Chung Ge-sun, and stating mere subjective suspicions is not enough. There must be objective, substantial circumstances that can justify such recusal. So unless there is a concrete evidence of bias that impacts the integrity of the trial itself, it is unlikely that it will lead to a change into any legal panels that are overseeing the trials right now.
Right, so we'll have to see, but the things that you've mentioned, direct personal interest and direct involvement or kind of familiar ties, we'll have to see if they are directly actually involved with themselves personally, not just their colleagues or what.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So the Constitutional Court today also has postponed deciding on the unconstitutionality of the failure to appoint Ma Eun-hyuk as the acting chief of the Constitutional Court as proposed by acting President Choi Sang-mok. Professor Song, how would you read into this, and how will the Constitutional Court's restoration of a full panel, 9 justices, influence the impeachment ruling?
Well, it would be consequential. I think there are a lot of speculations as to the ideological leanings of the Justice Ma Eun-hyuk. If he gets onto the bench, it's going to change the dynamics. I think what the Constitutional Court is doing is being very cautious. They postponed the meeting on a procedural ground. First off, they held a hearing for just over an hour about this matter, and they announced that they will render the ruling. But there was a brief filed by the acting president, Choi, questioning that whether the petition was really from the National Assembly, because it was from the speaker, but if it did not go through the process of making it a petition from the National Assembly, not from just the speaker, that might be a procedural error. I think that this is something that the Constitutional Court wants to be cautious about and have a further hearing to decide whether that is really the case.
Right. Now, we are aware that the Constitutional Court has effectively set the 8th hearing on February 13th, and it's the final session. Ms. Kim, do you think there's a possibility for this additional hearings to come? And also, if the current situation continues, when could we expect this final judgment, impeachment judgment, to be issued?
So there's definitely a possibility for the additional hearings since President Yoon's legal team has requested more than 24 witnesses to be called, and these include high figures such as Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and current acting President Choi Sang-mok. So if the court decides to bring in these witnesses into the court, additional hearings will be held, and it could push the timeline slightly further more than it initially planned it. However, even if more hearings are added, they are not expected to extend beyond the current schedule. This means that the trial's proceedings are anticipated to wrap up by the end of February or at the latest by March.
Okay, it's not that far from what many have been concerned about. Now, President Yoon might apply for bail. This is also a big concern, and he could cite for the need to ensure his right to defense. And if President Yoon's legal team does apply for bail, Professor Song, what is the likelihood that it would be granted?
Well, it's hard to predict because there's unprecedented proceedings all around. But normally what they consider when they're talking about the bail, how severe is the charges? First of all, I think the insurrection is one of the most serious charges you can bring. It's a capital punishment. It can go up to, I don't think it'll go to that far, but the court will consider this as a very serious charges. Whether there are precedents on this, other personnel who were indicted on the same charges are still in jail. So the president himself, just the only one to be released, would be a little bit strange. And the prosecution will have a opposition that they cited, which is the tampering of evidence or destruction of evidence. So those would be against allowing the bail. But of course, as you said, the right for defense is a very serious and very important human rights that should be accorded to the president. And him being the president, I think there is a certain amount of decorum, a certain amount of allowance that we should keep in mind. So I'm leaning against the allowing the bails, but this being unprecedented, can't be sure.
Right, but given the density of this insurrection charges, we'll really have to see, though. Now, as this criminal trial progresses, there's speculation that President Yoon's team might request a suspension of the impeachment trial to the Constitutional Court. Ms. Kim, what is the legal basis for such a request, and what's your forecast?
Well, there's an Article 51 in the Constitutional Court Act which can allow for the suspension when the same trial is happening as a criminal trial. So theoretically, President Yoon's legal team can definitely use this provision in order to uphold the impeachment trial. But here's a tricky one. Impeachment trials are meant to be fast. So they're designed to be decided fast if someone should be in the office or not in order to avoid national instability. So that is why the court usually want to wrap up the case within 90 days. So as for in the criminal trial, however, it can go to months or even years. So while there's a legal path for them to request a pause, it's not mandatory for the court to decide. And given the potential for the extended delays, it seems that the court would not pause the trial itself and instead try to proceed within normal time frame.
So it's not really likely for the suspension of the trial and also even the pause of the trial. Okay. Thank you so much, Attorney Kim and Professor Song, for your insights tonight. Afraid we'll have to wrap up our discussion at this point. We'll hope to speak to you both again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.